set up an environment that's really conducive to focus. So remove all of, we spoke about tools, or you had a question about tools as well. There's like the best tool that there is literally the off button on your phone. You wanna kind of turn off notifications, set up flight mode, on your phone, whatever that is, that you reduce the kind of distractions that you might have. Because when you match your energy level to the work, you then reduce distractions and you focus on your one big thing. That's when you could get really creative and you get a lot of work done in a very, very small amount of time.
This podcast is sponsored by Pragmatic Solutions, the player account management platform chosen by today's smart betting and gaming operators. Don't let technical constraints delay you from achieving your business goals. Expand your business, boost your margins, and dominate the market in any leading regulated jurisdiction with our powerful, flexible, and secure iGaming platform. Enjoy its extensive marketing tools, compliance protection, real-time data, and a wide portfolio of over 1,000 industry providers. It's time to upgrade your technology. Let Pragmatic Solutions show you the modern approach. Visit pragmatic.solutions and join the smart thinkers.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
Bingo, bango, bongo. Welcome back to the podcast. Leo Judkins of Habit Rewire. Great to have you here today. First question, Leo. How did you sleep last night?
I slept pretty well, thank you. It's funny. I actually lost my Kindle, and so it's part of my sleep routine. And because that is a bit of a trigger for me to fall asleep, took a little bit longer than normally. But I slept quite well, thank you.
Brilliant. And the reason we're asking this, of course, is that, Leo, you are a well-being and performance coach, with sleeping being one of the critical pillars of performance in your textbook here. But rather than me giving that introduction, Leo, why don't you start just talking a little bit more about your background and what led you into performance and well-being coaching?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pierre. First of all, I want to say thank you for being on the podcast. I really respect your podcast. I love the interactions you have with different guests. I'm a big fan, and I'm quite honored to be here as well. So thank you for having me. Well, thank you. I'm 43. I'm Dutch. I came to Gibraltar 15 years ago. Been in gaming for 15 years. And one of the things that happened to me is that I really struggled with my stress. I gained a lot of weight. Struggled with mental well-being. And loads of different areas. And as I kind of hit the top of my career, I hit the bottom of my health. I got some help. I got a coach, lost 35 kilos, turned my life around, and then obviously noticed that this is an issue in gaming for many different people. Certified as a nutritionist, then a sleep coach, stress management specialist, started coaching people in similar roles to me, and have now worked with about 200 iGaming leaders to help them live, feel, and perform better.
Yeah, brilliant, Leo. And as I talked about here before the recording, what I really respect is, you've done the trials and the tribulations yourself in the industry as a top executive. You've felt the challenges and the issues that comes with a really high pressure and highly taxing environment, and you managed yourself to turn your life around. And not only that, but then obviously go into this area, studying really detailed of how to keep yourself most productive and how to teach others of your peers to stay productive as well. So today we are talking about the 4 critical pillars to achieving peak performance, right? But before we kind of go into those 4 pillars, I just want to kind of ask you first and foremost, how would you describe your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. So Coaching means different things for different people. And, sometimes when we think about coaching, we think about leadership coaching, or maybe think about a football coach. My coaching philosophy is more about the things are already inside of yourself. And coaching is really about helping you discover what's already inside of yourself and what you already know, but helping you implement that in a way that fits your personal lifestyle. Especially in iGaming, we work a lot. It's a very high pressure, fast paced environment. And being able to customize things to your own lifestyle is really critical. Everything I do and everything that we coach around is about building habits and about sustainability. So making sure that instead of using short-term tactics that only give you short-term results, actually that's why it's called it habit rewire, rewiring your habits in a way that you can maintain it so that it becomes like brushing your teeth. You don't even have to think about it anymore. It's even when pressure is high and you're short on time, you're still able to take care of your well-being and performance because it's just part of your overall stack, if you will. And that's, I think, one of the key issues that most people struggle with, that they know what to do, but they don't really know how to do it in a way that they can keep on doing it. So that's what we help with. It's really about focusing on one thing and one thing only, one habit and one habit only, in the overlap between well-being and productivity. That's how you achieve peak performance.
Brilliant, Leo. And so zooming in on these 4 critical pillars to achieving high peak performance, can you just first start off by giving an introduction to these 4 pillars, and then perhaps we can break them down one by one?
Yeah, of course. So the way I think about our brain in general is that it's like a battery. If your battery is not fully charged, it's very difficult to perform well. And we often don't think about this, right? We all kind of we feel that we're productive and we're doing well and we're working hard, but really it starts with your overall battery, right? Whether or not your battery is charged, Duracell bunny, if you will. And so that kind of starts with your sleep. If you don't sleep well, and this is not about just sleeping long enough, this is also about the quality of your sleep. If you don't sleep well, your battery is never going to be fully charged. And as a result of that, it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve peak performance. The second thing is really about energy management. So once that battery is fully charged, it's about maintaining that energy in a way that you can still perform well. Third area is about productivity. So tools and tactics that you have to maintain focus, not be distracted, achieve flow state. And the third bit is about stress relief. And I'm not a big believer in work-life balance because work is just part of life, right? They're not separate. But it's more about work-life integration, and stress relief and being able to switch off and have good boundaries is such a key area to making sure that you can actually recharge again for the next day. So those are the 4 critical pillars.
Brilliant. Rather than work-life balance, as some high performers said, it's about work-work balance.
Yes.
So Leo, let's jump into the first topic, which is the topic of sleep. And I think this is such an interesting topic because the old school way of thinking about sleep as a high performer is kind of like, push through it. You don't really need to focus that much on sleeping that much. Slap yourself 3 times when you wake up and you'll be fine. Carry on with your day. Kids in school traditionally don't sleep enough, and they go tired to school, but that's part of the trials and tribulations of becoming a grown-up kind of thing. Push through it kind of thing. But this is changing really quickly, I noticed, in the last couple of years, where sleep, even amongst the high performers, is now becoming a priority. And to give an example of that, I was at a really interesting event by GearComply a number of months ago, and the CEO of Better in the US is Joey Levy. He's one of the kind of most highly regarded entrepreneurs in the US space. And he was asked, what are your secrets to success, let's say? And he pointed out, yes, I make sure I always sleep 8 hours. That is like my number one priority. So can you talk a little bit more about the importance of sleep? Why is this now becoming front and center in this world?
Yeah, so great question. So sleep is like, I remember it as well. I'm sure you're the same, Pierre, where we just we'll sleep when we're dead kind of thing, right? And that I suppose that works when you're 18 or something, but even then it's not sustainable. One of one of the things that our brain tricks us with is that it believes that we've had enough sleep, even if we didn't. And it's because we obviously don't fall over, we still function and we still work well. But the reason why sleep is just emerging as more of a kind of a high performance area is because of that idea of fully charging your battery. Having enough sleep and having high quality sleep is the key to making sure that your brain functions well, that you're creative, that you deal with stress well, that you can actually, deal with the difficulties that you go throughout a day. But it's also about productivity and just general kind of performance. So sleeping well is really the key to high performance. Without that, it's very, very difficult to do anything that is productive. You'll just be working long hours. You'll not get much done. You'll struggle to solve problems, and the problems that you get, they're going to seem far bigger than they actually are because you're just tired. And I think we all kind of realize this when we think about it. When we think about, right, I've had a bad night's sleep. How does that impact my day? We all kind of know that impacts your day pretty badly. But prioritizing sleep is really key to making sure that battery is fully charged.
Right, and you mentioned something earlier in the answer to, which is the quality of sleep, right? It's not only about how many hours do you lay down in your bed, and it's perhaps also more about the quality of sleep. If you've been drinking the day before, even if you just had 2 or 3 drinks, how does that impact your sleep? Going to bed stressed, so on and so forth. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of how do you improve the quality of sleep rather than just the hours of sleep?
Yeah, great question, Pierre. So most people think they need to have between 7 and 9 hours sleep. And although that's true, and research actually confirms that, the more impactful area is actually improving the quality of your sleep first. That's a lot easier for most people because when you've got kids or you have a long working day, kind of sleep is the last thing that happens. And you have to get up at a certain time. So it gets compressed, right? The amount of hours. So the easier thing to do, and actually the more impactful thing to do, is working on the quality of your sleep. And there's 3 key areas that help most for the majority of people that I've worked with. Number 1 is making sure that you limit screen time before bed. When you read this stuff online, it talks about like not having a screen an hour before bed. That is, for most people, completely not doable, and they'll get massive anxiety. So just reducing your screen time as much as possible before bed is already a great first step. If that's 10 minutes for you instead of no minutes, great first step. That's where you should start. The second thing is kind of that stress that you were talking about, Pierre, which is like many of us, we go to bed with still, work racing through our mind. And what happens is you might wake up throughout the night because you've got these thoughts that are popping up in your head. And that usually happens because we suppress that stuff when we get home because we want to switch off. Maybe we go, we watch a few Netflix episodes and then those thoughts pop back and we wake up. So one of the things that is really powerful is just to do a bit of brain dumping before bed. And I'm not necessarily talking about journaling, but just grabbing a piece of paper, writing whatever is on your mind on that piece of paper and leaving that next to your bed so that even when you wake up, you can use that piece of paper to write those thoughts down. And what happens is now you make it a problem of the piece of paper rather than a problem of your mind. Very, very powerful and very, very important. And then the third thing really is just making sure that you unwind before bed. So as you limit that screen time, just doing something that helps you relax. And that doesn't have to be meditation or anything. Maybe you want to put your clothes up for the next day. Maybe you want to have a shower, brush your teeth, whatever it is that helps you kind of unwind instead of going from 100 to 0 is really, really impactful for the quality of your sleep as well. So those are the 3 key areas that I see help most people in most cases.
Many people, though, have a really difficult time to sleep still, or even if they want to prioritize it and they want to give themselves time to make sure that they can sleep well. And my sister, for example, is a good example here where she has a really, really hard time to get a good night's sleep. And it's obviously something that impacts her life. And she is trying to figure out strategies for how to overcome those issues. And I know that, of course, there are many other people who are struggling with sleep, just to get a night of good sleep. Are there any red threads generally between people that have a really difficult time sleeping in the first place And are there any like more kind of deeper issues or things that they need to consider, or deeper strategies kind of thing that they need to be aware of in order to kind of overcome this massive challenge of just falling asleep in the first place?
Yeah. You know what? In most cases, and I'm going to assume that this is true for your sister as well, in most cases like that, it's actually the stress of falling asleep. So it's the pressure that you put on yourself for falling asleep. And that creates this loop that then makes it harder to fall asleep, because the stress obviously, doesn't allow your brain to unwind. And so there's tactics that you can use to help with that. I'm a big fan of coaching, obviously, around this to help you normalize some of the things that you're going through and maybe not be so stuck in your brain when it comes to like, what do I need to do and how do I need to figure it out? It's about giving yourself permission to actually try different things and relieve that pressure that you put on yourself as much as possible for falling asleep. Now, there's certain things that you can do to optimize your sleep environment, for example, make your room cold, don't have it cluttered, things that you can just find through a Google search. But really those three things that I just spoke about, limiting your screen time, making sure that you do a brain dump, and unwinding before bed can massively help. And if you've got if you struggle with kind of your sleep onset, things like breathing exercises can help. Getting out of bed when you're, in bed for too long and you can't fall asleep and trying to unwind again. Those are things that can be really important.
Right, and kind of if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep, something that I heard, I don't know if that's true, is that like you shouldn't stay in the bed. You should go out and kind of sit on the sofa, read a book or something like that until you get tired, so that your brain associates the bed with sleeping, right? Like rather than
100% true.
Associating the bed with something like that too.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's a bit like Pavlov's dog. I often think about. Habits are like that as well. It's you recognize a pattern and your brain reacts to it, and so the same is true for your bed. Lots of people that struggle with sleep actually use this bed for relaxation. They chill out, they lie there, watch telly in bed, whatever that is, and because your brain now has a different association with your bed than just sleep, it becomes a real problem. So whenever you struggle with falling asleep or you wake up during the night, don't go out of bed straight away when you wake up during the night. Do that bit of brain dumping for whatever woke you up, for that piece of paper that you've put next to your bed. But if then in 15, 20, 30 minutes you can't fall back asleep, go out, use that same kind of unwind technique that you're using, and then try again.
Right. How do you think about sleeping aids? Like, it's becoming more popular with melatonin, for example, as a way to fall asleep easier. And, now in certain countries around Europe and North America, marijuana, THC, CBD, stuff like that is becoming more popular as a way to fall asleep easier. How do you think about the kind of using medicines or taking pills or stuff like that in order to improve your sleep?
Yeah, good question. So they all help, right? There's loads of different things that can help you fall asleep, and those are, you're naming a few that can really be beneficial to people. However, what I always say is that you want to start with your habits. If you're not doing those three basic things that we just spoke about, then that's the first thing you want to fix. Everything else is kind of, additional, and they maybe have a 5%, I'm just naming some numbers, but 5% impact, where your habits are going to have a 95% impact on your results. So you always want to look at the things that you're doing first before you take supplements, and again, you can do that you can do that at the same time. My belief, both in productivity and habit development, is you want to focus on one thing and one thing only. And you want to do that one thing for as long as it takes for that to become a habit, so that it becomes like brushing your teeth. And when that's a habit, it all happens naturally, right? Your melatonin production will go up. All these things will no longer be necessary. So that's where I would suggest you start.
Brilliant. And what are the kind of consequences of not having great sleep? What happens when we don't sleep well in the short term and in the long term? Are there consequences to this phenomenon?
Yeah, very much so. So long term, you actually die younger, when you don't sleep enough. So that's very morbid, but that's the real risk. in the short term, like there's nothing, if you have a bad night's sleep, right, it just happens. And again, I wouldn't recommend overthinking these things or making it a huge, big element that again, when you put too much pressure on these areas, it becomes really difficult to maximize it and to improve it. What you want to do is you just want to focus on what are some things, simple things, small steps that I can take to improve my sleep. Because when you do have poor sleep, you solve problems you solve problems slower, right? You are less creative. Problems seem bigger. You're not as productive. When your battery is half charged, you end up at the end of the day completely brain fried. You're going to be doing things to completely unwind that are not going to be beneficial to your health. You're not going to be present at home with your partner or your kids. Like all these things start happening as a consequence of poor sleep, not necessarily because of work pressure. And most of us think it's because of the pressure that we face at work that we're struggling with our work-life integration or work balance, like you said earlier, but it's often that's actually not true. Often it's more about that you just didn't have enough capacity to start with.
Yeah, brilliant. So to summarize the topic of sleep, essentially it sounds like it's a lot about starting with, your own mental well-being. Like in order to sleep well, you also have to be kind of in a good place, and the habits need to be there, like kind of, as you point out, making sure that when you go to bed, make sure to limit the screen time. And I suppose the point of limiting the screen time is like when you have a bright light in your eyes, you are kind of tricking your brain that it's still daytime, essentially. So
exactly.
Like the melatonin production is not happening and so on. So like it's so important, right, to kind of find yourself in a darker place before you go to bed and so on, so that the body gets ready to sleep and so on. But it sounds a little bit, to summarize, it's like if you have your house in order, if you keep your house clean kind of thing within your mental framework, that sets you up for a good night's sleep.
Exactly.
To summarize things.
Yeah, and just kind of to kind of tie that down as well, Pierre, one thing I would say is these are a lot of things that we've just talked about through sleep, right? And they can feel overwhelming. It can feel that, if you, especially, I coach a lot of people that only sleep 5-6 hours, struggle to fall asleep, and it's actually quite typical in gaming because of the pressure and because of the way the industry works. Like, don't feel you have to do all these things at the same time. In fact, you shouldn't do all these things at the same time. Just do one thing and one thing only, and make it so easy that you can't not do it. Rig the game in your favor. That is the key to habit development, because it's like we often think that we need to do all these things and then we either never start or that we do start and we fall off the wagon because we're trying to do too many things at the same time. And so habit development is just about consistency. So make it so easy that even in the worst times, you can still be consistent. And that's why I'm saying just limit your screen time, for example, by 10 minutes before you go to bed. That's already a great start if you're not doing anything there. And then do that for 2-3 weeks and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll just give a little bit of analysis of myself for my own sleep patterns. And tell me what you think here, Leo. But something that I've found for myself, at least, I generally sleep really well, but I do notice like clear differences in my sleep if I do some of the following things. Like if I drink caffeine in the afternoon, it's like that's gonna disrupt my sleep. I know that people are breaking down caffeine faster and slower, and my body just seems to be breaking down caffeine really slow. So if I drink caffeine after like 2 p.m., it's gonna interrupt my sleep, kind of thing. That's like one thing. And another thing actually that I realized is like I'm a quite active person. But if I do a really heavy activity in the evening that really like releases a lot of endorphins in my body and like really and a lot of adrenaline and stuff like that, if I do a heavy sporting activity, that can make it really hard for me to go to sleep in the evening. So I try to do my like activities in the morning.
Yeah.
Another thing I notice is like if I have like 2 drinks of alcohol, like if I have like 2 glasses of wine or more in a dinner, that is going to impact my sleep as well. Not necessarily the falling asleep part, because it can be easier to fall asleep after a couple of drinks. But I just wake up the next day feeling like, oh, I did not have a good night of sleep, kind of thing. And I don't know if are those the kind of more common ways to think about sleep disruptors? Are there any more kind of actions like that can disrupt the sleep?
Yeah, that's a great a great overview, because you're right. Caffeine generally has a half time of about 6 hours. So that means after 6 hours of your last caffeine intake, there's about half the caffeine still in your blood. That can massively affect it. And don't forget that this is cumulative. Most of us don't have one cup of coffee, right? And so yeah, limiting it, up until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock could be very beneficial. It's not just the endorphins with exercise, late exercise. It's also your core temperature that goes up, right? So you go to bed with a higher core temperature, and like a cold sleeping environment is really conducive to good sleep. So that's also one of the areas that you're noticing, which is a good example. And then alcohol can definitely impact the quality of your sleep. There's loads of other things that people struggle with. Generally, I notice that it's more around work stuff, right? That's still racing through your mind. I remember I would wait for midnight to see the overnight results, on the P&L, to see what kind of performance we had in the business. And yeah, then, you're waiting. And then, business is bad, or margins are horrible, or, some punter came in really lucky, and, oh my God, you go to bed with that, right? And that's obviously not conducive to your sleep. So it's what I typically say is that it's the stuff that you would tell your kids that you shouldn't be doing, right? That's how you want to look at it. And then it's about implementing that in a way that kind of fits your personal lifestyle.
Brilliant, Leo. And on the topic of alcohol, we're going to stay on that a little bit later in the podcast as well. But I think that is really a cultural phenomenon that is really, really, really worth talking about. The phenomena, the drinking culture, especially in our industry, but also in general culture, and how accepted it is, but actually how detrimental it can be. But I want to save that topic for a little bit later. So so we managed to go through our night of sleep. We wake up now and, great. We listen to Leo and his advice, and we wake up really, really refreshed, and we have a lot of energy. But now we move into the second pillar here, right, which is to manage that energy. So can you give a little bit of introduction on that pillar of the importance of managing your energy?
Yeah, great. So our battery is fully charged, right? We wake up full of energy. We're jumping out of bed, probably not, but we're fully charged. We're mentally ready for the day. So there's a few things that are important then. Obviously, if your battery then drains very quickly, that's going to cause a problem halfway through the day or towards the evening, right? So, and this is not necessarily about pressure, but it's more about how you deal with the things that you're going to be dealing with throughout the day. And the way I often like thinking about this is that what we very often do is we switch between different things continuously, right? Emails, Slack, Teams, quick questions, meetings, we're continuously kind of task switching. And I like comparing that to a lamp that you turn off and on and off and on and off and on. What's going to happen to that lamp? It's going to burn out, right? And so that's kind of what happens to our mental energy as well. So managing your energy levels, your focus is really important for not only, making sure that you've got plenty in the tank throughout the day, but also for your overall productivity and performance. There's loads of things that you can do there, which we can dive into, but that's a really important concept that I think most people don't think about. Lots of people think about time management, but really the first thing that you want to think about is energy management.
Right. So essentially, it can be easy sometimes to start your workday and it's and you just blow that energy in kind of one go. Like rather than maintaining it, to turn it into like a rocket that is like continuously using its fuel, the rocket just explodes, right?
Exactly.
So like what are like some of the tactics that you can use to kind of spread that energy out across the day and set yourself up for a more productive energy expenditure?
Yeah, love that. So it kind of starts with the morning, right? So morning, first thing that you wake up, what most of us do is we grab our phones and we straight into like vomit all over our desk, right? Like it's all this emails, that barrage of emails, and you're straight away, you're in a high stress state. Now that's what you want to do first. And in the morning is just have a glass of water, rehydrate. You're drinking straight away. Here we go. So have a glass of water. Yeah, well done. So rehydrate, get some movement in. Like don't straight away go into what's going to cause you go into that high stress mode. The other thing that I recommend is having a think about what's the one big thing that you want to be doing today. So what's the one big thing that you want to achieve, that even if the whole day goes wrong, that still, if you wake up tomorrow, you're still proud of what you did today. Like your one big thing is so crucial. And then once you've gone through that kind of simple morning routine of just like you're not going from 100 to 0 at night, don't go from a 0 to 100 in the morning. You know, as you kind of ease into the day, you start your day, make sure that when you start your day that you kind of manage that energy through taking regular breaks, not task switching continuously, using focus blocks. Time blocking can be really important. Like we'll talk about all these things, but it's more about make sure that you manage your energy level by doing things that don't drain you straight away, right? And the second thing is that I think that most people forget is that we have all these things that we need to do throughout a day, but some things are obviously more impactful than others, right? Some things are more important than others. And very often we leave those things to the end of the day because we haven't had time for it, or we have, things just happen throughout the day. But that's when our brains are maybe less energetic already. And as a result of that, the thing that has the most impact or is most important to our business or to our role, we leave to when we're lowest on energy. That doesn't make any sense, right? You got to flip that around. And so if you can, doing deep work or doing focus work at the start of the day and aligning that work to your most important task, your most important project, whatever it is very important, not necessarily urgent, can be really beneficial to your overall productivity and managing your energy.
Right. And I can sometimes feel the pressure of performing can sometimes set me into like a bit of a doom loop kind of thing where I'm like, I really want to perform, but I'm like, I'm getting stuck, and then I get more and more stressed, and so I get into this like doom loop of doing like surface level work, and then at some point I can wake up from that, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like I'm not being my best self here. Like whereas other days I can be hyper productive, and I get like a month worth of work done in a day kind of thing. And I always try to think about like, how do I find that state where I can be my best self during the day kind of thing. And it's really, really hard to answer that question. I found I've been thinking about it for a long time. I don't know if you have any ideas. Can you help me here, and everyone who's listening? How do you find these kind of deep flow states where you just are your best self kind of thing? And is that something you can do every day? When you had a good night's sleep, if you set yourself up well, is that half the battle? Are there more tactics that you can pursue in order to put yourself in that state?
Yeah, great question. So there's these things like the 5 a.m. club that we hear about, right? And that's fine, but that's super generic. What you want to do is you want to match your chronotype to the work that you're doing. So how your night pattern, your brain works in terms of energy, you want to match that to the type of work that you're doing. So for many of us, that's first thing in the morning. For many of us, our mental energy is the highest in the morning. What you want to do is you want to match the type of tasks, creative, deep work, stuff that's really important, that requires deep thinking or strategic work, to when your energy state is generally the highest. Right? For other people, that might be in the afternoon. For other people, that might be in the evening. So you want to match how your brain works energetically to the type of work that you're doing. And we call that time blocking, right? So that's the first thing that you want to achieve. Then when you actually set up those time blocks to match your energy level, what you then want to do is you want to set up an environment that's really conducive to focus. So remove all of, we spoke about tools, or you had a question about tools as well. There's like the best tool that there is literally the off button on your phone. You want to kind of turn off notifications, set up flight mode, on your phone, whatever that is, that you reduce the kind of distractions that you might have. Because when you match your energy level to the work, you then reduce distractions and you focus on your one big thing. That's when you could get really creative and you get a lot of work done in a very, very small amount of time. So those are kind of the key things. And it doesn't always work, right? Because your brain isn't it's not a machine. It doesn't do the same thing all the time. But what you can do is you can take control of the things that you have full control over and set yourself up for success as much as possible.
Right. So it seems a little bit, Leo, that, every time your phone gives up a noise or every time you get a message on your Slack channel and whatever, it brings you up to the surface kind of thing.
Yes.
And in order to go deep and to where the real productive work happens, it takes a little bit of time to get down there, right? Like it takes time to focus your energy to one point, keep the focus there, and then the magic will happen. So I noticed, for example, when I'm out flying, I have a habit of never buying the internet on a flight, because that's the only time where I literally have no other option than to sit down and focus on what is in front of me. I cannot go to take a walk. I can't go to the kitchen. I don't have any phone that is giving me messages and so on and so forth. And that just automatically focus my attention and energy. And I think that is something that is shared with many high performers. Is they will find that situation. They will go out to the woods where there is no internet, or find a nice cabin or something like this, where it just all distractions gets taken aback, basically, in order to solve a really difficult problem or to really think about the deeper kind of work. That seems to be the kind of the solution. The solution.
This is true, but unfortunately, not, we can't go on flights every day and we can't go in the woods every day. So so let's keep it practical. The practical thing is that, on average, we get interrupted every 11 minutes, and it takes 23 minutes to get back to the same amount of focus that we had before, right? So the research confirms this, and you can already see that if we get interrupted every 11 minutes and it takes 23 minutes to get back to the same state, we're creating an infinite loop, right? Now, I think it's about 80 to 90% of people keep their inbox open in the background. And emails are just not supposed to be used as an instant communicator, right? And very often we have everything else around us determining our attention and focus. Whereas what you want to do is you want to take control of your energy, time, and focus. And that is really the key. And so many of the listeners are probably in an open plan, for example, where you get constant quick questions and interruptions. Now, you want to set some boundaries around that. Sometimes a headset can work, but I see some people, they have like this red card on the top of their screen saying this is a period for me where I'm trying to do some deep work to try to focus. And like really putting the blinkers on, setting your boundaries and then protecting your boundaries is key here to being more productive. The funny thing is, when we spoke last week, I also said to you, most people feel like we do loads of assessments with all of the companies that we work with, and everybody always rates their productivity very, very highly. But there's a clear mismatch between people's perception and the actual reality, because we know that most people aren't as productive as they could be because of these constant interruptions. And so setting up some habits there can really be a game changer around your energy, managing your energy levels, but also around your performance in general.
Yeah, I think you have mentioned this as well in some of your texts, but it's like, are you busy or are you productive, right? Because many people can come to the end of the day feeling, I worked the whole day today, but actually the only thing that they've done is like pushing messages forward, right?
Exactly.
They're like, they are in an email thread and they are replying to that email thread. So then I've done one thing, but actually, if you spend a little bit more time, maybe you could just kill that email thread and solve the problem rather than it becoming a ping pong over days or weeks, for example. And same goes for Slack messages and email messages and so on and so forth. So that's a big thing, right? It's like, are you actually being productive, or are you just pushing messages forward and just being busy?
And the biggest problem here is our own brain, right? We are just curious about the things that happen. We're on CC somewhere, or we're invited to a meeting and we feel that we need to kind of see what's going on. And it's just our own curiosity that distracts us continuously from the things that actually matter. And all this sidetracking really kills our focus. And one of the things that I work with clients is what we call the reverse Eisenhower matrix. So maybe you know the Eisenhower matrix, where you split things between urgent and important. And that's how, it can be a very effective way to manage your tasks and manage the things that are important to you. But the reverse Eisenhower matrix is actually at the end of the day, you look back and you go through the things that you've done throughout the day and you plug them into that same Eisenhower matrix. And now you assess yourself against like what was actually urgent and important. And I think just that reflection only has to take 5 minutes. That insight that you create from that can be so impactful for improving your overall productivity and performance.
Right. So essentially, kind of slowing down a little bit, recognizing that actually, if you take a little bit time to reflect about your day and what you are actually doing, can then actually impact your productivity in a pretty significant way, I suppose.
Yes, exactly. There's this book called Essentialism. I don't know if you've read it, but it's an amazing book, and it has this little image on maybe the 10th page or something where there's two circles. So they say, it says energy in the middle, and the first circle on the left has all these little arrows going out, representing the different types of things that we're focusing on. And our energy is going in all these different directions, and it's making a little bit of progress with all these arrows. And then on the right, we've got that same circle with energy, right? And you've got one arrow that points up high and that goes way further. The representation is that if you focus on the one thing and the one thing that is most impactful to your day and most important to you, you're going to make far more progress and impact on the business than focusing on all these different things that maybe feel great because you're ticking off tasks, but you're actually not doing anything.
Yeah, brilliant. So the third point then is enhancing that productivity. So if we are now learned how to manage our energy, and we can reflect on our day, we know what is being unproductive, what is being productive. Now we want to enhance that productivity, really to take things to the next level. How do you think about that third pillar?
Yeah, so we touched on quite a few things already in like when we were talking about managing your energy, but productivity is really about doing the things that matter, right? And being able to recognize the things that actually move the dial. And very often we just deal with whatever hits our desk or whatever is on our desk and whatever we need to deal with, which is okay. But you want to take control of your day as much as possible. And for sure, this is not possible for everyone. And also it's not possible 100% of the time. And it's certainly not possible for the entire day. But as much as possible, you want to take charge of your day and take charge of your time, where you match the type of work that you're doing with, as I said before, your energy level, and then you identify your one big thing for the day and you get that done during when you're most energetic. Remove distractions, make sure you focus, use something like a Pomodoro technique, where you're focused for 25 minutes on one thing, you remove all distractions, you take a 5-minute break and you go again. Again, these are all methods that sound great, they're listed in books, and they sound great. But what you want to do is you want to look at what works for you. If you can't focus for 25 minutes, then, adjust that Pomodoro technique to 10 minutes. Great already, but make sure that as much as possible, you focus on one thing and one thing only. There's this, I think it's kind of debunked now. I think most people know, but loads of people think that they're great at multitasking, and actually people that make most mistakes are people that multitask, right? So it's just, it's just not true. So yeah, managing your attention, managing your focus is crucial. The thing is, all technology is built for getting us engaged in a platform, right? Just like betting apps are, that we're sending notifications that just pull people back into our product. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're all the same, right? Teams, Slack, email, Outlook, all the same. They pull us back into their products. And that is you at the mercy of somebody else's, timeline and priorities. What you want to do is you want to reverse that. So as much as possible, take back charge of your time and your attention.
Brilliant. So I suppose the goal for productivity is to enter this deep state, the deep work state, and where you get that most valuable work done. But how long can most people actually stay in that deep work state? Because it's a really high energy state, right? It's hard to stay there forever, I suppose.
Well, not necessarily. It depends on the task that you're doing. So, like if you're doing something that you love doing, that you're really engaged with, we're fortunate, I suppose, as a small business, we can just allocate our time and energy to things that we love the most. You can do that forever. It's flow state is actually the thing where you lose track of time, right? you don't even realize. You think about when you were young, you know, things for me that was playing with Lego. You know, you just lose track of time, and you could do it forever. You don't even realize what time it is. Or gaming is for some people, you know, sitting behind the PlayStation playing a particular game. But a flow state doesn't have to, is actually something that where you are like aligned with what you're doing and you feeling in flow. So it doesn't have to take a ton of energy. However, it is different for different people. It's more about managing your attention and not being distracted from that flow state. And that is something that's very difficult for people. So it's more about that area than actually the high performance, you know, focus state, deep work state. It's more about that managing attention. And that can be very hard. So rewiring habits around, you know, how you interact with different platforms and software and notifications and turning things off, that is such a pivotal kind of high leverage habit that you can rewire, because it helps you in all these other areas. And once you get used to that, being able to be indistractable, Nir Eyal has a book about this, which is amazing. But once you learn to be indistractable, it's very easy to maintain that state.
Yeah. I think about energy and focus, almost like, you know, when you turn on the TV and you have noise on the TV, when you just see this black and white scatter, you know,
yeah,
that is like your mind being scattered. And let's say that like that is your available energy that you have, and kind of like the purpose and the training that you need to do in your mind is to be able to take all of that noise and focus it onto one particular point. Yes. Right, without that energy becoming scattered elsewhere. And the individuals who are able to point that energy in the direction they want, when they can master their energy and point them to a particular point, they are probably the same people who become really, really high achievers, whether it is in sport, where you really need to focus your attention for a long time on a sometimes very monotone task.
Exactly.
Or in business, of course, where you are thinking very, very deep about very difficult and challenging problems.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we're getting at, right? Like
yes.
We're trying to train our minds on like being able to maintain and to control that energy, to direct it in the way that you want to direct it, which is really, really, really difficult.
Very hard. Right? And there's two things that are going to be, one of them is going to be a little bit controversial here, I think. Two things that are crucial. First of all, it's about saying no, right? It's not so much about knowing what to do. It's actually about knowing what not to do. I recommend people have a not do list, you know, because there's all these things that are actually important that you want to be doing that are maybe not going to be as uncomfortable as the most important thing, which you might be delaying. And so therefore you're doing all these other things that you believe are important. But what you want to do is you want to say no to all those things and want to do the most important thing first. Right? So a not do list and understanding what not to do is really key. And those are things that are still going to be important to the business, right? But it's about managing your attention and managing your focus to the thing that is going to move the dial the most. The second thing, which I think is going to be the controversial part, is you want to think about like how you are creative, right? And so in like any sort of senior role, it's more about strategic management and direction. So, you know, where do we get those thoughts? They happen under the shower, right? Like you have shower thoughts. Now, why do you get shower thoughts? It's because your brain is in a state of relaxation where you're not on your phone, you're not stressed, there's nothing happening, and you create space to be creative. Now, think about that in business, right? That actually means doing nothing, right? And that is very controversial for most people because we all think that it's all about working harder, pushing harder. And that is true when it comes to actually pushing the envelope for big projects and doing work. But actually a state of creativity and strategy is more about relaxation and creating space. And that is very difficult for people because we're always on dopamine, you know, we want to go, and creating that state of relaxation can be very, very hard, but it's key to creativity and strategy.
Right. Final question on that point as well is, in your experience speaking to executives on a daily basis, how many people, especially on that level, are highly structured in how they approach their day? how many executives use like really advanced to-do list, or they journal, or they keep time blocking kind of thing. Like in your experience, how many people are on that side, and how many people are just like taking the day as it comes, let's say?
No, the majority of people that I work with don't, right? And that's why they seek coaching. So they know that they want to do it. They just struggle with how to do it, or actually how to focus on the one thing that's going to help them the most in implementing these habits. So there's probably a bit of a bias when, like, from my point of view, because that's why people seek coaching, right? So I haven't got a great answer for you there, but yeah, the majority of people that we work with, they kind of start from, I want to be doing this and I know I should be doing this. I just don't know how to do it because I get interrupted all the time. Typically, what happens is that people get promoted into a new role. They leave a gap in the role behind them. They start micromanaging that area, basically fill 2 roles now. And all of a sudden, they get overwhelmed with all of the stuff that they need to be doing. And they never find the time or energy to start thinking about some of these things that are going to be really impactful for their performance. And that's where coaching helps a lot, because it basically allows you to figure out what are the things that you should be doing, how should you be doing it, despite working 60 hours a week. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to highlight, just the fact that I think most people can come into a mindset of like, they feel that everyone else is being hyper-productive, so they also need to be hyper-productive, and that's perhaps what is fueling the lack of actually being productive but staying busy at the end of the day, because people just feel like, oh my god, I need to do 100 things because everyone else around me is being hyper-productive. But actually, even on executive level, people on executive level are no special. Like
no, it's the same thing.
Something different with those people, right? It's people are highly unorganized.
Yeah, 100%.
They all need help. They all walk around with the same thoughts as most of us do, right? And just knowing that, I think, is a good way to just calm yourself down a little bit and just be able to take a deep breath and create these habits at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? We all have this weak comparison thing going on, and that's really difficult for a lot of people. We feel that we all need to do all these things around productivity and performance and lifestyle habits, and we see people around us and we think, oh, they've got it all figured out. No, nobody does. Actually, nobody has it figured out, but it's about doing things that kind of slowly move the dial, and so that you're focused on making small improvements, right? This 1%, this Kaizen method idea, right? Where we focus on becoming 1% better every single day. And at the end of the year, we have this exponential effect of being 36 times better than we were at the start of the year. And I think this long-term vision is actually what stops people not having a long-term vision on in self-improvements, is what stops people from making progress. We're very often focused on these really quick tactics that we want to implement. We make huge changes, fall off the wagon, try something else because we hear it somewhere, and then it doesn't work out, and we try something else. And that's a human problem. And so what we want to do is we just want to focus on one thing, make small improvements, and then gradually get to where we want to get to. But it's about identifying the one thing that's going to be most impactful and have this real big leverage on your overall habits.
So we've learned how to sleep. We've learned how to manage our energy. We are now staying productive. Now we're at the end of the day, and it's time to relieve stress, right? So when we leave work, how do we then kind of recharge and regain that energy? So that is the 4th point, which is relieving stress. Can you talk about the 4th pillar, Leo?
Yeah, so start with a story, right? So I started I was director of retention at Victor, and like managing global teams, and it was high stress, obviously a high stress role. One of the things I was doing, because I didn't have the tools to deal with stress, was just drinking a bottle of wine after work every day, right? Just to relieve stress. And that is like, that wasn't great, right? I gained a lot of weight, struggled the next day, created this loop, and I didn't know how to break out of it. It created this whole, I just didn't know how to get out, until I actually got a coach and started making these improvements. Now, the thing is that when we think about pressure and stress and resilience, there are 3 different words that mean 3 different things. Stress is actually not the problem. Pressure is not the problem. I think about stress as a bell curve. Too little stressed, and you're completely bored, lethargic, you don't have the energy to do anything, too much stress, you burn out, right? But stress is maybe not even the right word for it. It's how we perceive stress, right? Because stress is like, resilience is like your lens. You have pressure that comes in, resilience is the lens, and then whatever is the output is the stress, right? So how you deal with that stress is such a big key part to actually managing your energy, managing your life balance in general, dealing with your performance. So having more tools than a bottle of wine every night is very, 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 very beneficial to you managing that stress and managing your performance. And so most people probably think straight away about meditation or breathing techniques. And although they're proven to be beneficial, they are more often than not too far away from somebody's comfort zone. People feel that that's maybe too wishy-washy or, and that's cool, right? If that's the case, then you certainly shouldn't be doing that for the first thing, because it's going to be too far outside of your comfort zone. Then it's more about, okay, how can I, once we've got the energy level sorted, then it's more about how do I create situations that are conducive to reducing that stress. Throughout the day, that's more about taking regular breaks. So make it a habit to cut meetings short if you've got back-to-back meetings all day. Give yourself 5 minutes in between, or even 2 minutes in between those meetings where you take high-quality breaks. And what I mean with that is, don't look at your phone, don't look at emails in between. Actually take a breath, take a breath in between those meetings and then go to the next one. It's about making sure that at the end of the day, you kind of close off your day, that you have boundaries between, what your work day looks like and what your private life looks like. Be more disciplined about, actually recovering energy, recovering your mental state and switching off. Now, of course, most of us, we still get emails in throughout the day, but make sure that, again, you don't get distracted too much and that you have boundaries around your time and your energy. Those are really key for managing that stress. But the biggest thing I found is that stress at the end of the day, or feeling completely brain fried at the end of the day, is usually a consequence of mistakes that you've made at the start of the day, in your sleep, in your morning routine, or how you manage your overall productivity. And once you've got those 3 things sorted, your stress is no longer as much of an issue.
Right. You mentioned in the beginning, of course, the old coping mechanism that you had yourself, which was, coming home from a day of work and drinking a bottle of wine. And this seems to be a bit of a red thread within the iGaming industry, the drinking culture that is very prevalent within the industry. We see it at everything from networking events to company after work events, and alcohol is always a very centric role into how we switch off from work. Can you address that drinking culture? Obviously having to be a victim of it yourself, and having been in the industry for a long time, why is alcohol kind of the first line of defense, let's say, to switch off from stress, and how do we tackle that?
Yeah, I think, look, it's kind of normal, right? It's a normal thing that happens in gaming. You're in Malta, I'm in Jib. We're expats in a different country. We don't have a social support net. When we move here, we don't have a social support network like we used to have back home. We making new family and friends. Usually the first friends that we make are probably colleagues, right? And so what do? You go to a bar, and all of that is pretty normal, right? I don't want to stigmatize. I think sometimes when we talk about these things, drinking culture, we kind of start stigmatizing a bit, or people feel that they're stigmatized. And I think that's not helpful for any sort of change that you want to create. What I feel is also important is that, it's not about you being victim to the drinking culture. It's actually about you taking ownership and responsibility for what you want to do differently. And I am a firm believer of what I call crowding in to crowd out. So it's not so much about not doing something anymore, not drinking anymore, but it's more about, okay, how can I find new things or different things that help me unwind and help me relieve stress, that is a part of my tool belt to actually deal with it. And there's simple things like finding a hobby, doing team sports, going out and finding something that really energizes you, that you enjoy, going for a walk, whatever it is, but find different things so that you create a tool belt of things that help you relieve stress. And I feel that is the key, because with anything, with anything that you try to change, when you focus too much on not doing something anymore, it creates this real sense of, deprivation. Whereas if you focus on the things that you do want to be doing and you push the things out that you don't want to be doing, it creates this sense of empowerment. And that is the key to habit formation.
Yeah, because the irony of creating these positive habits, meditation, doing yoga, training, being mindful, journaling, so on and so forth. The irony is that when you need them the most is when those habits tend to fall off, right? When you get really stressed, when something really bad happens and you're like, oh my God, you need to work even harder. And they are the first thing that tend to fall off during those moments when you need them the most. So what do you need to do in order to hold on to those habits once you actually get into a part of your life when you need them the most?
Yeah, great question. I mean, one of the things that we all, maybe especially as men, we want to power through. We need to man up and we need to power through this stuff, right? And that is obviously something that is not necessarily helpful for these types of situations that you're describing. They can be helpful for the moment, but then what we want to do is we want to fall back whenever. I'll give you an example. I'm currently coaching someone. He's a chief commercial officer and works in this business. One of his number two is basically just fallen ill, and he's taken over loads of his responsibilities as well, his team management, etc. The guy was already working 50 hours, now doing 60, 70 hours, right? Really struggling with, even though we've worked together for 6 months so far, worked on loads of habits. He's struggling with actually finding the time for the things that help him relieve some of that stress and relieve some of that pressure. He's got 3 kids. So some of those things are really difficult, finding that balance, being present at home. So what we typically do in those kind of situations, we just identify the things that are most important, right? So what are the most important things that you still want to be doing that are going to have the biggest effect on relieving some of that stress, but also you just feeling that you're still in control of your life and, not feeling guilty about not being present. And so identifying 2 or 3 things that you can do quickly and easily is the key there. And the same is true for habit development. It's not about doing things that are, scientifically proven to be the best thing or whatever you read in a book. It's about things that you can do in 10, 15 minutes a day so that you can stay consistent regardless of what happens. And if that's too much, do something that takes 5 minutes a day.
Yeah. I think about it as well, in my own habits, like what are my actual priorities in my life? So, work is very much up there, right? Building a business, there's a lot at stake, managing a team, we're responsible for paying people's salaries and stuff like that. So naturally, that is going to be a really high priority. And that's what takes the most time in my life, let's say. But if I can turn my training into an even higher priority, where even if I am at my absolute peak, most busy, actually the training that I enjoy, the way I find my coping mechanism to relieve stress, if that is genuinely my top priority in my life, then that will always be a part of my life. Yeah. But likewise, that can turn around as well. So if drinking is my number one priority in life, that is also something that will lead to detrimental effect then, right? Because you always will seek yourself out drinking. The more stressed you are, the more you will drink and so on. So I think maybe auditing yourself, literally making an audit of what are my genuine priorities in my life, if I really think about it, not what you spend the most time on, but when it comes down to it, what are my priorities? If I really need to work, if I really need to train, if I really want to go out to party, and I have the option of doing those 3 things on a Saturday evening, what will I choose in that moment?
Yes.
Right? It's I think that for me had made me a lot more consistent in keeping those positive habits. I used to be very yo-yo in my training in my 20s. I would train super hard, and then something would happen, and I would not train for 6 months, but that auditing and really making sure that I can put myself in that state where the positive habits is my genuinely number one priority. Yeah. That has helped me a lot to turn my habits more positive.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that's a really good way of doing it. One of the things that can help with that is because sometimes you lose focus on those things, right? So one of the things that can really help with that, if other people are in a similar situation, is actually connect it to the things that are important to you. So for example, if you're noticing that working out really impacts your performance at work and your performance at work really matters to you, then connecting those two things together, realizing that when you work out actually improves your performance, it's kind of what we call habit stacking. When you connect those two things, it can make a massive difference in making it easier for yourself to remember to make that choice, but also to make that choice in the moment. Because we always prefer kind of short-term pleasure over long-term results, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's something that can help.
And another thing here as well is like, if your priorities are like, okay, training is really high, work is really high, and party is really high, let's say. But in order to go to a party, like if you want to do a proper big night out, you know that you have to sacrifice the training the next day. You have to sacrifice work performance for the next 3 or 4 days. And knowing that there is sacrifice that comes with that decision, it also can keep you a little bit at bay. Let's say that if your priorities are in order, then life kind of falls in order after that as well.
Yes.
With the decisions to take, and like you said before, it's not about like living a perfect life according to the textbook, right? It's just living in balance and just being able to prioritize things in the right order, and then kind of finding a good balance between both sides at the end of the day. I think that is more sustainable.
One of the things that helps sometimes as well is kind of future pacing things. So thinking about, it's maybe a little bit too woo-woo for some people, but that's okay. Like thinking about the person that you want to be and then actually already acting like that. Right. So kind of going into the future, like who do I want to become? And you can think about a person that you look up to or a fictional character and think about what are the things that they do and how can I do that today? Because again, like I said at the beginning, coaching is just about getting the stuff out of you that's already inside of you. And really behavior, James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, is that every action you take is a vote towards the person that you want to become. And so it's not about like doing it's about taking action and doing things that are aligned with the person that you want to become, but you're actually already that person. You just need to take those actions. And I think that future pacing can very often help with deciding to those priorities rather than, taking a whatever you prefer right now.
Yeah, I heard another really interesting example on the same line there. It's Jordan Peterson's talking about controversial figures. But Jordan Peterson says like, if you write down like on a piece of paper, if you do everything right in the next 5 years, like everything that you can do, you will do it, and you will just be the best version of yourself. Like, where will you be in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
Where will you be? It's just without thinking about like what are your goals, but just if you do everything right in this 5 years, you really dedicate yourself to building a great life. Where will you be? And then likewise, the second exercise would be, what if you let yourself go in 5 years? What if you prioritize really bad habits and you fall behind? What are the worst case scenarios as well? And then you see, how much impact you have over your own life with the decisions that you take, right?
Something you'll like here as well, Pierre, is that it's like we call it, it's about trajectory, right? And so very often when we start out with people, we talk about, okay, where were you 5 years ago and where are you today? If you draw a line through that,
right, like
where's your trajectory going, right? And for most people that see coaching, that's not very pretty, right? And that's okay, because the pain of staying the same needs to be bigger than the discomfort of taking action before people actually do something. Right. And that's okay, right? Yeah. So that's just the way life works, and that's okay. But future pacing and kind of extrapolating where you're going can really help with that. Similarly, when you change the nose of your airplane, right, your trajectory by 1%, you end up in a whole different place, right? And you don't even notice that difference. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is that they think everything needs to happen right now. No, only small things need to happen right now. Because when you think back to where you were a year ago and where you are today, and you think about how different you actually are, it shows you that small changes can make a massive impact. But when we're focused on the moment, it's really difficult to see that. So taking a step back, creating a bit of a roadmap for yourself almost and thinking about, okay, what are the most impactful habits that I can build right now? How do I build them slowly, consistently, so that they become like brushing my teeth? That really changes your life. And it's moving away from perfectionism and more towards a growth mindset.
Right. You talked about atomic habits, Leo, and kind of the 1% incremental improvement that has a big impact in your life in the long term. What other book recommendations do you have on these subjects of self-help and productivity?
Yeah, so I've got a big, you probably can't see it on the camera, I've got a big bookcase there, but
color coordinated and everything.
I know, you have to. So I knew you were going to ask this question. So there's this book from Matthew Walker, which is called Why We Sleep, really, really good on kind of helping you with your sleep and improving. Obviously, Atomic Habits from James Clear. For deep work, Cal Newport is like super good.
Newport, the
GOAT. There's the GOAT. The all-time classic, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But the biggest thing I would recommend, is a really short read, is this one. It's called The One Thing. And it talks about if you kind of future pace, whatever that is, in your professional or your personal life, if you think about what your goal is, where do you see yourself in 3 years, whatever that is, right? And then kind of move that back towards, okay, what is something I need to do next year? What is something I need to do this month? And therefore, what is something I need to do this week? And therefore, what is something I need to do today, so that everything else becomes much easier to get to that end result, and kind of moving your way back like a funnel almost towards what you need to be doing today it can be very, very beneficial. So I found this book, The One Thing, really, really good for kind of future pacing and thinking about like what do I need to do today.
Brilliant, Leo. The One Thing. I'm gonna look that up after this podcast. Final question for you here today. Many people will listen to this podcast on the way to work or in the morning before starting a day of work. So to those people who are just about to start their day, what is the one advice that you'd like to share with them today as they go about their day?
Yeah, so if you've already started your day, it's difficult to fix your sleep, because that's already happened. But that would be typically my recommendation. But really, that one thing is, as you're going to work, that one thing is what I would highly recommend. We call this your one big thing, which is all about thinking about what can I do today so that tomorrow, that I'd be proud of tomorrow, even if I do nothing else today and my whole day gets kind of sabotaged by problems and whatever it is. So focusing on that one big thing and doing that first before you do anything else is so impactful, because that means that you're moving the needle forward every single day on the biggest priority that is not necessarily urgent, but is most important in your business. So that's what I would recommend.
Brilliant, Leo. Improve your sleep, manage your energy, enhance your productivity, and relieve your stress, and that sets you up for a good life. Thank you so much for today, Leo. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Pierre.